everybody. We're going to go ahead and reconvene and get back started into our regular board meeting. Next on our agenda board, we are on item 13. Today, actually, I'm sorry, before the report, we have seen some public comment that wanted to have their comments this afternoon, so we will jump back up to our comments. And as a reminder for our community comment, all are welcome to give comment at any board meeting. Just make sure you check in with our board clerk and sign up at least the day before at noon, the Monday before the board meeting at noon. You have 3 minutes to speak. Make sure our board clerk has your contact information so that we may reach back out to you. And you have 3 minutes to address the board. Your time will start after you give your name. Your 3 minutes will start, and then we will let you know when your 3 minutes have finished. I think there is a timer on the screen if you need to see that as well. And thank you for being here with us. So first on our agenda under community comment, would invite up to the podium Mr. Jim Schrader.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. If you can make sure you pull the mic over to you. Thanks, Jim.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Jim Schrader, and thank you for this confusion that I think I contributed to for when I wish to speak. I do thank you all for allowing us to address the board at today's meeting. Rosalind Brown, who's here today, and I are co-chairs of the KCK Advisory Committee for a 21st Century Library. As you are aware, our advisory committee has been working for the past year with the public library and with you on needed replacement of our downtown main branch library and administrative center. Several of our advisory committee members are here this afternoon with us to support this effort that I understand you will be dealing with later on this afternoon. Over these past months, our advisory committee has been reporting back to you on our efforts. Today, I know you will be considering the possibility of including in the next phase of the master plan additional capital expenditure funds to be able to have this 21st Century Library come to fruition. I want to assure you that our Community Advisory Committee is ready and eager to work with the board, with your staff, and with the whole community. We fully understand the importance of this master plan vision that you've been undertaking, and the importance of that for all of our students and for all of the community. Regarding the library specifically, here's what we at the advisory committee see as our next steps once you have adopted this master plan's first phase. My co-chair, Rosalind Brown, is also president of the KCK Library Foundation, which is the nonprofit specifically working to raise supplemental funds for our libraries. Last month, the Board of Education did approve a memorandum of agreement between the district and the foundation. And so the foundation is right now detailing plans to kick off in the new year its $20 million capital campaign toward this new $60 million 21st Century Library to serve our entire community. At our advisory committee meeting yesterday, we all reaffirmed our commitment to create specific public outreach about what this new 21st Century Library would do for our whole community. And as with all of our advisory committee efforts, it's our sincere desire to work hand in hand with you as the board, with your staff, and across the community to see this through. In closing, our KCK community continues to move forward, and our advisory committee intends to be a good partner with the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools to make all of this first phase of the master plan really happen. So thank you for your consideration as you move forward today, and we're here to partner with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. And before we continue, I forgot to acknowledge, and if there is anyone that needs interpretation, we do have interpreters to do live simultaneous interpretation available. Please let us know, raise your hand, and we do have interpretation available in various different languages for today's meeting, for the rest of today's meeting as well. Okay. And actually, thank you, Ms. Drew. So I would actually entertain a motion to come back to open session. There's a motion.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Thank you. Ms. Smith, roll call.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Rachel Russell, Dr. Nguyen.
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to capture in open session in the minutes that we did have Mr. Schrader give his community comment today to address the board. Thank you. Our next person on comment on the list for community comment, I know Ms. Penn Hicks, you spoke earlier, but if you wanted to, you do have 3 minutes since you are on the agenda for today as well.
My comments will really be just Pamela Penn Hicks will just be a continuation of some of the things I spoke to you about this morning, but also at the meeting that you had last Monday when you addressed the new feeder proposal. I've had an opportunity to speak with some members of the community and run the proposal by them, and one of the major concerns that I heard coming back to me was the issue of whether there would be a direct or indirect or cultural displacement of our children, especially at the Quindaro, moving into the Washington feeder. There is an issue with the community about what we've been trying to do, which is revitalize the Northeast area in particular, and our schools are very important to us, but we also have to factor in that parents have a lot of difficulty providing just the basics for their children, and particularly since the resources are not in the area. And that particular moving them to the Washington feeder system would create an additional burden on the community to be able to be in contact with their children, to provide them opportunities to participate in after-school activities, and it would just further the burden that a lot of people are feeling right now. And the school district is not the only issue. The tax issue, whether the UG is an issue, BPU, all of these are causing considerable expense to people whose income is not able to handle all this additional burden. So I also heard that they were not interested in new schools, but they were interested in making sure that our children get the best quality education that they possibly can. So as a community representative, I wanted to share that with the board to let you know, even though you may have done public hearings, there is still a major concern in the community that those issues are not being addressed in this proposal. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Penn Hicks. Next, would invite Ms. Carolyn Wyatt.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Back again. Concerning the feeder, the schools that are already in the Northeast area, Esquindero, like she said, and Northwest is Carl Bruce is right around the corner. They're even in walking distance. And then Forest Grant to Rosedale, I know they've been doing that, but, it's still way away. And like it said that when they closed Northeast, which is deep in the Northeast, when they closed that took the neighborhood away. They took neighborhood school away. And it still have effects on that right now. People moved out to get closer to the school. That hurt the voting of the neighborhood for the Northeast area. Also, what I would say that we just feel that building more schools is not the answer. You can have nice schools. Northwest, Carl Bruce is a very nice school, but for its education, if they're not up to par where they need to be on education, new schools just look pretty. But the kids coming out of that school makes a difference for whether they're going to college, whether they're going to drop out of school. So what our attention should be first, get the kids starting grade school where they need to be. Once you get them where they need to be, they can go anywhere. It doesn't really matter. They can stand up against any student. And so I'm not against building schools, but I'm for building children. And I think if we're about building the children first, we won't have a problem, because even the children can help their parents who may not be where they need to be. But if we don't reach the kids, what's good as a school? You have a lot of kids being homeschooled. Why are they being homeschooled? They're being homeschooled because they can get a better education at home than they're getting at school. So it shouldn't be like that. You know, we need our kids for the future. And, you know, and one other thing I want to say about that is the conduct. You know, you have rules that you want the kids to follow, but if you don't enforce them, you have nothing. So it's like, you know, if you say that the kids can't bring phone to school, if you say if you get in trouble too many times, you got to go to alternate school, or you're going to have to go home and your parents going to bring you back to get you in, and that way you're making the parents be responsible for that kid that they need to be in the beginning. But also the school has this responsibility to follow their own conduct laws, you know, and that's very important because kids nowadays, everything, if I in school, ain't nothing going to happen, you know. And if nothing happens, they'll just keep doing it. And it'll pass down, you know, generation to generation. So you got to start somewhere, making the kids be responsible, making the teacher be responsible, the kids, the parents, the superintendent, everybody together has to be responsible for children. And so I'm an advocate for children. You know,
Thank you.
so,
We're at time. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But thank you, Ms. Wyatt, for
yeah,
your
thank you too.
comments. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And please make sure that Ms. Smith has everyone's contact information that has provided comment today. Board, next on our agenda is item 13. Today we will hear a report from Hollis and Miller regarding our facilities study. Good afternoon as they come and make their way to the front. Thank you for joining us today.
Dustin is, when they get older. You can introduce it at that time. He's not an item.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Keegan Jackson, and on behalf of Hollis Miller Architects, I just want to thank you for this opportunity today and for the past 10 months. I'll be kicking us off this afternoon, and then Megan and Kate, as normal, will follow and carry the bulk of the presentation. And then a little bit later, Dustin, after we're done with our presentation, I believe Dustin of Piper Sandler will be following with some additional financial information as well. Today we're going to briefly talk about today's goals. We're going to recap our work to date. We're going to share some recommended master plan options and potential feeder diagram adjustments. We'll wrap up with next steps and some decisions leading to the potential of adoption of a master plan. As a reminder, a master plan is a clear and proactive roadmap navigating toward your unique educational goals as a district. A roadmap that takes you from where you are today to where you'd like to be in the future. Let's take a look at the process that led us up to today. We delivered this process by engaging people, leveraging data, and planning the future through the lens of your learning and facility priorities. We start off with the game plan to identify the who, and the when. We also collected data to understand where you are today. We did that by utilizing the 2016 effort data that we had as a starting point, or kind of like a baseline. Obviously, it's been a few years, so this is a great opportunity to kind of update that master plan. We then surveyed the community and the staff. We assessed your facilities. We confirmed capacities and demographics, and we studied the feeder diagrams, as you know. Together, we co-created planning priorities clarifying where you want to go. Using this data and the priorities, we explored options with the district and the community input along the way. And today we're sharing those options with you to basically position you with the potential of adopting the best plan or that roadmap for the future. This, as a reminder, are the planning priorities that we shared a couple months ago in one of our updates. And as a reminder what these are the planning priorities that were established by the district with district input, community input, that basically identified some critical concepts that were important to you for us to consider in the planning process. The great news is the reason we're revisiting this today, it's been a few months, but it's about, the great news is all these recommendations we're bringing forward have been vetted and really reflect all the options really reflect these priorities that you established as a district. To recap now we're going to kind of move into recapping the options or some of the process since we've been here last. As we shared a moment ago, the goal today is to really share some recommendations with you so you can potentially adopt that plan. We'll be doing this in a number of ways. One is recommending some overall master planning options to share those with you, recap those with you. We'll also be sharing some considerations on a few feeder diagrams with the flexibility to act on a decision relative to those, or maybe defer those to the future, because there's some flexibility with that with the planning. And then also we'll share a few next step decisions once a master plan is adopted, whether it's today or in the future. It's just when that's adopted, that'll give us an opportunity to share some things with you about what some of those next steps might be relative to these. So with that, I'm going to transition this over to Megan and Kate, and Megan will start us off.
All right, thank you, Keegan, and good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate the time today. We're going to dive right in, and we are going to share some information that is similar to what we provided at the last board update, and then also provide an additional layer to hopefully create some additional clarity for our discussions here today. So as you saw at the previous board meeting, we are presenting 3 options as part of our recommendation today for an overall phase 1 of the master plan. These options range from $300 million to $400 million, and these were created from each of those individual project bundles that we've reviewed over the last few meetings that range from $2 million to about $130 million in each of those bundles. As a quick reminder, all of these options what we're presenting today include classroom additions to eliminate or reduce the number of mobiles in the classroom. They include building upgrades such as accessibility, special education upgrades, interior finish upgrades, and deferred maintenance projects. What you don't see in any of these options currently from those identified bundles to date are Bundle 4, which was the elementary school gym cafeteria combinations, and that was due to the fact that we had several challenges there. Some of the sites just physically do not have the space to support a secondary facility there to add it on to it. Some of these buildings are going to be heard from on recommendations to either replace or consolidate, so obviously we wouldn't want to invest short-term if we're looking to replace those long-term. And then again, some of these will be taken care of in potential future phases. So there would be a plan to address them long-term, but maybe not today in phase 1. And then similarly, option 6A, which was a district-focused athletic complex on a common site, was not included because current discussions and priorities through community and district engagement led to the priority of investing at middle school and high school sites individually versus a district-wide complex at this time. So again, not taking it off the table, but not including it in phase 1 conversations. And then finally, while we will talk about some potential dollars for a main library contribution later today, none of those are included in any of these base options, but could be added back into that if that was desired by the board. So with that, this is going to look pretty familiar to what we talked about last time. So we're going to start with the middle option, the $360 million baseline. This was identified as some of the highest priorities for the district today, and felt like this was the amount of work that we really needed to take from both how much could we physically handle, and then also what were the biggest needs that we wanted to address in the next 5 to 7 years based on the engagement and data collected to date. So we're going to look at this a little bit differently today than we have in the past. We focused on kind of those bundles, which included multiple schools, things like that. Today we're going to flip it a little bit and review it by project type and kind of start from largest scale to smaller scale to go into a little bit more detail there on the actual logistics of making a phase 1 happen. So you'll see here today, you're going to see this broken down by demo rebuild, demo combined, building additions, those remodel and facility upgrades that would mainly be inside buildings as well as athletic fields, and then everything that would fall under that deferred maintenance infrastructure piece there. And as we continue to talk, we're again focusing on phase 1 today. We'll look at phase 2 just briefly, and we are showing that as an approximate 5-year duration. I know we've talked about, the long-term master plan would be a 10-year focus, and this first phase would be 5 years. As we've continued to go through the sequencing of the logistics of rebuilding this many schools in one phase, there may need to be a little bit of flexibility there just in terms of if we determine that we want to procure some different sites or depending on how we want to move kids potentially between buildings, there may be some float there one way or the other on that duration. So that may need to stay a little bit flexible, but understanding that that's kind of the basic goal for 5 years here to be revisited. So with that, we're going to again start kind of big picture and then work our way down. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about the buildings that are being recommended for replacement, whether that's a one-for-one replacement of a current facility like Central and Argentine, or a combination or consolidation of 2 elementary schools by rebuilding 1 new elementary school. As you can see here, this is about a third, a little over a third, actually, sorry, almost 2/3 of the dollars in this $360 million option, with almost $230 million of that captured in new facilities here. So wanted to step back just a little bit because I know this was a lot of conversation at the most recent facility vision team and community vision team in terms of what is the criteria or considerations when we start to make these recommendations for replacing buildings. Let's really talk about what goes into some of those drivers for those recommendations. And if you remember back several months when we brought the large data assessment report to you, one of the biggest drivers here is going to be those assessment scores and the current conditions of those facilities. While buildings even 100+ years old can be maintained and improved over time, there are still some limiting factors, accessibility, older structures that may require even more dollars to invest in to get them up to today's educational standards. So we've got to balance that with some of those factors there. Again, that ongoing deferred maintenance and improvement costs. Older buildings also take more money from a utility and maintenance standpoint, so we have to consider that when we look at do we continue to improve or replace buildings. Number 3 there, the current enrollment and capacity of the facilities is important. As we've talked about a lot, there is that kind of right sizing, going back to our planning priorities, of a facility. What's the right size for a middle school? What's the right size for an elementary school or high school? And trying to balance that enrollment across the district. So we really have to ask ourselves, are some of those smaller schools operationally efficient, both from a staffing and a facility maintenance standpoint? And is it the right size that we actually want to start from as we're educating our kids effectively? And then again with older buildings, and we know as a district we are a little bit landlocked here, so there are constraints of the existing size of different sites, whether that's grading challenges, access from traffic, things like that that we need to consider as well. And then finally, is there the potential for some of these smaller schools to be consolidated without moving kids too far within the district? So that geographic adjacency is also critical. And then finally, again, the accessibility of these facilities. Some of these older buildings, while we can improve the accessibility and some of those other physical barriers to educating kids, some of those are still going to maintain that we need to balance. And then finally, as we look at short versus long-term investment in buildings that might have mobile classrooms that we want to eliminate right now. So with that, I did want to share, so hidden and not hidden, I guess that's a bad word, included in all of that data, we wanted to pull some of the critical numbers and facts out based on these schools that are being recommended for replacement. So you'll see here, almost all these elementary schools being recommended to consolidate are sitting right at that 60% or under for that assessment score. And as a reminder of that rubrics, when they fall at or under 60, that indicates significant physical or infrastructure needs, significant maintenance needed, and this is really where we need to consider the pros and cons of spending a lot of dollars to invest and improve those facilities versus potentially replacing them. You'll see here all of those fall underneath the 60 with the exception of TA Edison. We'll go ahead and point that one out. That one, as you can see, though, as we move over further towards the right on the categories, the other critical piece is that utilization rate. And when we get down to 62%, honestly under 75%, we've only got 232 kids in that building currently when it's built for almost 400. So we've got to look at those from a how are we operating efficiently as well. Still, it is a little bit higher on the score range, but there are still some improvements that are needed there as well. So that is one that may be considered for future development. Maybe it's not, even though we'd consolidate kids potentially, maybe that's not one that we completely eliminate from the district's inventory, but we reuse it for another purpose. So with that, I'm going to dive in just a little bit and talk about the logistics of potentially rebuilding and consolidating some of these facilities. So we'll start with the first elementary, and this would be the combination of Emerson and New Stanley. Current recommendation is to rebuild on Emerson site. As you can see by this diagram, that would require us to demolish the current building to build on it because the site is smaller and would not allow for us to rebuild while keeping kids in that building. So that would be one consideration, that we would need to find a temporary location for students while the new one is built, and then we can consolidate both of those schools there. As you'll see in all these recommendations for elementary replacements, we're looking at about 72,000 square foot for a capacity of 500 to 550 students at each of these facilities. Once this building was rebuilt and New Stanley students joined Emerson on this site, the existing New Stanley building would be empty temporarily and could be either used as a swing site. I'm going to use that term swing site of where we could potentially move kids short-term while other buildings are being rebuilt. Could be repurposed or demolished at a later date to be determined. As you can see on the bottom of each of these slides, we are going to talk a little bit about the sizes of some of these sites. As I meant, that is a limiting factor for where we could potentially rebuild some of these consolidated buildings. The Emerson site is just under 3 acres, whereas in comparison, the current New Stanley site is half that. The second elementary school combination that's being recommended currently would be combining Silver City and Noble Prentice elementary schools on the Noble Prentice site. Same size square footage, same student capacity. This is one where we do have the option for constructing the new building while kids are still in that existing building because of that site. That would obviously be some logistics that have to be worked through, but potential there would help to facilitate and make the process a little bit more expedient. With this, once this facility was rebuilt, then Silver City kids would join them at Noble Prentice site, and then that would open up the Silver City site for the next recommendation, which would be rebuilding Argentine on that site. As you can see at the bottom here, the Silver City site is one of the current largest elementary or middle school sites in the district's inventory, so that's why that's being recommended for moving Argentine to that site. And then similarly, Noble Prentice site is pretty comparable to the Emerson one if we start to look at parity between those elementary school new sites. So with that, as I mentioned, then the next recommendation would be to rebuild Argentine on the current Silver City site. The new middle school model would be about 125,000 square feet with a 900 to 950 student capacity. That is slightly larger than what was rebuilt at Carl B. or Gloria Willis, and that is to provide an additional layer of flexibility, short-term and then also long-term, for the potential of exploring the consolidation of Argentine and Rosedale. That's not currently in this phase 1 recommendation, but by building it to this size, that would allow some options long-term, whether it's a consolidation or bringing different programs or other kids to this new facility. Similarly, once this would be rebuilt, Argentine would be vacated, and then that could also be used as a swing site for middle school or other elementary schools while other things are built. As you can see here, the current Argentine site is much smaller. It's kind of sized more similarly actually to what we would see for the elementary schools. So not a lot of space there to rebuild on site, even if we were to demolish it first. The next one would be the new Central Middle School. Right now, we're showing a couple different options in terms of rebuilding this. Again, same size as the new Argentine Middle School, again, to provide additional capacity flexibility feeding into this building. The first option would be a new building on the current site. Obviously, that would mean we would need to move students out of that building for probably 18 months to 2 years, which would be a challenge, obviously. It also, if you look here at the bottom, the current central site, including Whittier Elementary School, is just under 7 acres, which is really not ideal for a middle school site. You know, ideally in a more kind of suburban district, you would probably see a middle school site getting closer from that 15 to 20 acres. It is probably unlikely that within your district boundaries we would find that, but again, we'd probably want to try and get at least closer to that 9 to 10 like we saw over at Silver City to at least be able to provide some exterior athletic amenities. It could be rebuilt on this site, and as you can see across the street, there are some green space that could be used for activities currently, but it would be very tight to rebuild on the site. You could get the building there, some parking and circulation, Not necessarily ideal, but that is one option if additional new land could not be procured for this site. And then finally, the final recommendation for consolidation would be at between Lindbergh and Eugene Ware on the current Eugene Ware site. Same as the other two elementary schools, about 72,000 square feet, the 5 to 550 student capacity. This one also has enough space. Again, at the bottom you see there, that's at 7.7 acres. Would have the potential to rebuild while kids are in that building to give us a little bit more flexibility with the timing of these different projects. And then again, after this, after Lindbergh students would join here, that building could be used as a swing site or repurposed in the future. So with that, I mentioned a lot of resequencing and having to potentially move students a few times to accomplish this. Because of the limitations of some of the sites, unfortunately, that is the reality of trying to get some of these moves to happen. So what we've done is we've started to put together a couple different sequencing paths to just talk through that. These could both be done concurrently. So this first one would be dealing with Noble Prentice, Silver City, Argentine, and Central Middle School sites, talking about building the new elementary school on Noble Prentice first. That would allow us to move Silver City kids into that new elementary school to allow us to build the new Argentine. Again, then we could move those kids into that building. And then if we were reusing the central site, would need to move those central kids into the current Argentine for a short period to rebuild on the site. If we are able to locate a new site for central, then that could be happening at a different time as well, sooner than waiting for Argentine to be rebuilt. And then that second sequence is looking at the first critical piece there would be building the new elementary school on Eugene Ware. That way we can move those Lindbergh kids there, use that as a swing site. If TA Edison is consolidated into Rushton and other elementaries in that feeder, which we'll talk about a little bit later, that is another potential for a swing site that could be used sooner to help expedite some of these elementary school rebuilds. And then once that new elementary school is built on the Emerson site and moved in there, then New Stanley would also be available for a swing site. So with that, I know there's been some discussion of trying to understand what buildings would be demolished versus vacated in this first phase, and then kind of what those next decision points would be for utilization of some of those facilities long-term. So in order to make what we just talked about happen, Emerson, Noble Prentice, and Silver City current facilities would need to be demolished in order to rebuild on those sites. So those sites would still have a school on them, but those would replace those. At the end of phase one, potentially TA Edison would be vacated if we decide to consolidate that into their schools. There would not be a new rebuild there. And the New Stanley and Lindbergh elementary schools would be vacated by the end of phase one. Argentine Middle School as well, and then potentially Central if we are not rebuilding on that site. So with those, one thing to keep in mind is, based on the sequence you just saw, there's a lot of movement that needs to happen in this first phase, and a lot of those schools are needed to help support kids in that interim period. So some of these decisions likely would not result in a truly vacant building to the end of phase one or into phase two. So there'll be some time to really talk about what other district functions would we like to repurpose some of these for, or is there a function that would be best supported on one of those sites that would necessitate taking down those buildings and then rebuilding on those sites as well. The other piece on here that is not a today decision or even this year decision would be continuing to look at that possibility if Rosedale would be consolidated into Argentine as kind of a phase 1A or phase 2 there before you look towards a future phase 2. So with that, I'll jump into kind of the ones that are a little bit more straightforward. So from a building addition standpoint, we've got several classroom additions, some additional space expansion at Transportation South, and then 2 gym additions at the high schools to support a second athletic space internally at both of those that do not have a second gym. So we'd be looking at a classroom addition to replace mobile classrooms at Whittier. One constraint or caveat here is, as we talked about, that site is very tight, so we would need to either relocate or replace Central before that addition could happen. So that would fall pretty low in the sequencing of phase one because of that, because we just do not have the space there. The second one, M.E. Pearson Elementary, we do have space there to add a classroom addition. We will need to rework the play area a little bit, but should be minor there. And then Schlegel High School, a secondary gym addition there to help support the amount of activities currently at that facility, as well as a second gym at Harmon High School to further support those programs. Next, we go into the list of remodel and facility upgrades. We've allocated dollars here at the high school level as well as the middle school level for both interior and exterior athletic improvements, focusing on the exterior at the high schools for Phase 1, middle schools a little bit more in Phase 2, and then gym interior renovations at both levels to start with. We do have some dollars in here for some pool upgrades at the current high school facilities to continue to improve those. $12 million for auditorium improvements at both the middle and high school level. We've gotten about $9 million for sped improvements. That would include both district programs as well as allocating dollars to each of the feeders to make sure we can provide a level of parity and equity at both learning levels and feeders. Some of those improvements may be included in those new builds. Obviously, we can create supportive specialized spaces for sped in those new builds and then prioritize some of those dollars in the other feeders that would not be getting new builds in this phase to help balance those efforts and improvements. And then finally, accessibility improvements, buildings that would not be replaced, prioritizing getting as many accessibility upgrades as included to bring those up to speed. And then about $18 million for kind of those interior environment upgrades, as we talked about in the planning priorities, kind of that refresh of all the facilities was really critical, so dollars there. And then also have about $6 million there for some additional furniture and technology upgrades to help increase the support of educational facility environments as well. And then finally here, we have about $44.5 million for immediate district-wide deferred maintenance needs. This includes lighting, drainage, parking lots, roofs, windows, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, kind of all those infrastructure facility needs to keep our buildings enclosed and safe and secure, and also them comfortable for kids. We've got a few $2 million there for some concrete repairs over at North Central Office, across the street, and then some dollars for playgrounds and perimeter fencing as well. So with that, lots of information. While we are focused on Phase 1 today, we still want to make sure that we're thinking long-term and understanding what the next step may be. With any master plan, we do recommend a yearly review and minor updates to the plan just to make sure that we're taking into account enrollment changes, projections, all those things, especially with open enrollment coming. Want to be mindful that we are balancing that capacity and taking that into continuation, and then would recommend major updates to the facility master plan every 3 to 5 years before you would adopt a new phase to make sure priorities are still consistent and that there's been no other major changes that would impact a different direction for the district. As you can see here in the documents, what we're showing for a potential Phase 2 would be continuing the work of improvements and consolidations at the elementary school level. Again, to kind of look at that right sizing of the district. We've talked about right sizing buildings, but also the district as a whole. Right now, that ratio of elementary schools to middle schools to high schools is still a little bit imbalanced, and we still do have a few of those elementary schools that are smaller in size. So you'll see that here. Continuing the improvements at the middle school level, looking at additional capacity at the high school level, whether that's additions to current facilities or renovations, or looking at more of a focused innovation or CTE type facility for more specialized high school programs, but again, to create more capacity district-wide to support those kids in this. Some additional dollars for athletics to continue those improvements, and then about a large chunk of dollars, $81 million, for continual district deferred maintenance, knowing that we've got to continue that process as well. So finally, as a recap to the 3 options that we're providing from a layer of recommendation today, won't go into this one anymore since we've just covered this in detail. So option 2 is that $360 million baseline. And then as we step down to the $300 million option 1, the one singular change there is the removal of one middle school replacement from the scope. So that would require a decision or prioritization of replacement of Central or Argentine. One of those would need to be removed from this option. And then as we step up to option 3, the $400 million option, we are adding in $20 million for additional early childhood capacity district-wide, locations to be determined, an additional $5 million of athletic improvement dollars at the middle school and high school level, and then $15 million in Bundle 15 for a district aquatic center. While we're not going to get into the details of it right now, we do want to note that from conversations, I believe that will happen later today. We do have kind of those interim options there if we were to decide to include Bundle 14 in any of these for a new main library contribution. There could be up to that $20 million that was shown in that bundle added on to either of these options that would fall in the middle there at $320 million, option 1 with a library, up to 380, option 2 with a library, and then up to 420, option 3 with the potential for the library included there. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Kate, and she is going to walk us through a continuation of what we shared at the last meeting, FET and CVT, in terms of one proposed feeder adjustment option, as well as 2 slight modifications to that based on some of the conversations and questions to date to share with you guys.
Hello. So first I want to start off, before I walk you through the feeder diagrams, I want to preface this section of the presentation by saying that we have been exploring feeder diagrams all along as a piece of the overall master plan. However, keep in mind that that is a decision that does not have to be made on feeder diagrams today. This is something that can be revisited at any point in the process. So you are familiar with this slide from the last board update. When reviewing the feeder diagram as a whole, we looked at schools that were under and over capacity, had mobiles, or had schools with access or location challenges. As a quick reminder, when we go through the diagrams, please focus on the numbers within the shapes that designate capacity and enrollment. This is your district as it stands today. There are some key items here on what we want to highlight. The first is the schools that are over and under capacity. The second are schools with mobiles. And then when we started analyzing feeder diagrams, we started by adding in the replaced and consolidated schools, and then layering in the proposed feeder diagram changes to balance the remainder of the district. So this is your current capacity. We added in the layer of the 2027 predicted RSP numbers, and the takeaway from this slide is that your enrollment is trending downward. So we're going to cover now what we're calling option A, which is what we presented to you at the last board meeting. It covers the changes to Harmon, Washington, and Wyandotte. So starting with Harmon, there are 2 things we want to cover here. Grant moves out, which allows for the possibility of future consolidation of the middle schools. And then T.A. Edison gets absorbed into Frank Rushton and the remainder of those 2 new schools below the river. The Schlegel feeder is right-sized and has no changes. The Washington cluster, Quindaro moves in, and then Washington goes over capacity. Washington's capacity drops by 2027, so it has been suggested that to wait until that time, until phase 2, to address any high school changes as an overall district. In the Wyandotte cluster, Grant moves in, and then Wyandotte remains over capacity. Just like Washington, decisions at the high school capacity will follow at phase 2. So you'll notice, if you're looking at your board presentation, this slide is slightly out of sequence. That it's just out of sequence. It has not changed its information at all. So several comments from the CBT meeting brought up concerns over Quindaro being sent to Eisenhower in Washington. Their worry mainly centered around travel distances and access for after-school activities. In order to review this impact, option B was created. We are only showing the Wyandotte closer because that's the only one affected here. By Quindaro remaining and Grant moving in, Wyandotte's capacity grows to 2,084. Option C would be simply looking at what would happen if no moves were considered and everything stays as is today along with the planned consolidations. This is just a map for your reference. And then proposed feeder options A, B, and C are here with a list of pros and cons. You can see just by looking that option A seems to have more pros, but it's up to you all to evaluate these options and decide which pros and cons are most important for your overall district. All this information has been presented to you so that you have a holistic view of the options and how they integrate with the feeders. We have given you several feeder options, but by no means does this have to be decided today. This could be something you revisit after an option is chosen and you start having conversations about project sequencing and vacated buildings. The goals for Phase 2 would simply be to continue to work to reduce overcapacities at the high school level and look to consolidate where possible to best utilize facilities and dollars. And I'll hand it over to Megan to wrap up.
Okay, well, with that, we are going to take a step back here in a second and kind of look back at the path forward. So as we mentioned at the beginning, this somewhat concludes our overall recommendations based on the last 8 months of effort, data collected, engagement through all the different committees and the community at large. And we're excited to present you these options here today. Obviously, we know there's going to be some discussions, questions, but the goal would be for you guys to take this information and determine what the best path forward for the district is based on what we've presented. Potentially select an overall option for that Phase 1 that would lead to some other decision points down the road. As we shared previously today, right now, within the recommendation, there are 3 baseline options, the $300, $360, and $400 million options, including those project lists, and then each of those would have the subset of the potential for adding dollars in for the library. As Kate mentioned, we've shared 3 options for feeder or cluster adjustments. These are not directly tied to the initial options 1 through 3 of the project list. Those can all be successful without making any changes at this time or waiting to make any changes to the cluster or feeder adjustments in the future. And then finally, once an option is adopted by the board and the desire is to move forward and implement this facility master plan, there are some other additional decision points that would need to come pretty quickly after. The first critical one would be if option 1 is selected. That does remove 1 middle school from the overall master plan, so a decision would need to be made on which middle school to prioritize replacing in Phase 1. The second piece would be if Central is going to be replaced, deciding on if we are okay replacing on the current site and would need to relocate kids temporarily, or if we can procure a new site for that facility. And then down the road, this would not be as soon, but down the road after this phase, if the sequencing would occur, there would be some additional decision points on how to repurpose and reuse some of the existing buildings that would be vacated. And then finally, not contingent on these, but a later decision down the road would be whether from an operational standpoint we wanted to look at consolidating Rosedale and Argentine at that time. So with that, I think we're going to hand it off to Dustin Avey with Piper Sandler here in just a second. Again, we appreciate the time, look forward to any questions or conversations, and just appreciate the partnership and hope that this is a product of what you guys were hoping to see from this master plan and has all the information to help you guys make decisions to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. Dustin Avey with Piper Sandler. So I think probably the next part of this conversation really is just taking a look at really the financial impact, financial implications of the master plan and the related options that were presented to the board. So I really wanted to spend just a few minutes reviewing those financial models and giving you a sense of what the impact would be based upon the board considering kind of, I would say, what I would call the baseline options plus a library solution as well. A few things related to, scroll through here. So financial plan, again, we've talked about this on a number of occasions, but just wanted to highlight a few things that go into the financial plan, and then we'll get into the specifics related to really the community investment or the community impact related to the tax associated with the 3 options. So interest rates obviously being one, right? Largest cost of any bond project is going to be interest rates. Interest rates obviously are not near record lows as they were 2 years ago, although I would tell you, if you look historically speaking, interest rates are still, have been higher than their current levels 88% of the time. So again, relatively speaking, yes, we are higher than where we were in 2020 and 21, but relatively speaking, we're very comparable to where we were in 2017, 18, and 19. Two important factors that go into the financial plan. Number one is cess valuation, and number two, state aid. Okay, so district cess valuation has been very consistent and actually growing at a fairly significant rate. Past 3-year growth in assessed valuation is 9%. 10-year average is 5.5%. As we've discussed before, we still maintain a very conservative approach to valuation assumptions in financial modeling. Our financial models assume a 2% valuation growth, whereas you've been growing, as you can see, at over 5% over the last 2 years. Again, part of that conservatism when it comes to valuation growth is actually why you're in this position today with respect to being able to think about future capital needs and hopefully minimizing the impact to patrons. State aid on bonds, a lot of changes in state law related to state aid and capital improvement state aid. The 2016 election, the state of Kansas currently pays 29% of annual principal and interest payments. There are some changes in the law here in 2022. Under the current law, any new proposed project, the state would pay about 31%. Those state aid percentages do change every year, so as you can see over time, we're modeling to make sure we can accommodate any changes that may occur related to state aid. But again, there's a lot of districts who get 0% assistance from the state. You're a fortunate district in that any financial modeling that we're looking at now, the state of Kansas does pay 31% of the principal and interest payment. Mill levy history. Again, I would just say the district has done a really good job, and the board from managing the mill levy. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes to school finance over the last 10 years. The district's done a great job with managing the mill levy and maintaining a consistent overall consistent overall mill levy. As you can see in this chart, really since 2014-15, the district's overall mill levy has been right around 49 mills. I wanted to show you this both with and without the library mill levy, considering the options that the board may be considering with the inclusion of a potential bundle related to the library project in an amount not to exceed the $20 million that was presented as part of the master plan. If we were to look at the library, so the mill levy history with the library, you can see that the total mill levy, again, been very consistent at 60 mills when you factor in the library mill levy. When we think, and I want to go back to this page after we look at the financial models. So the library did increase its mill levy a number of years ago to help to begin collecting and raising funds for the library project. If I recall correctly, the current amount that the library has on hand is around $20 million. The concept behind the potential inclusion of a library project, if the board decides to go down that path, would provide the second $20 million, right, not to exceed $20 million. And then I think, as the library had mentioned, they're going to start fundraising for the balance of the project, which is an additional $20 million. If the Board of Education decides to include a bundle that would include an amount not to exceed $20 million into a scope of project, the library would not need to levy the dollars, tax dollars, to raise the $20 million. Because they would not need to raise to keep the levy the same, the mill levy for the library could be decreased by 1.5 mills. So by the inclusion of the library bundle in any sort of scope, that would result in the mill levy for the library being reduced by 1.5 mills. Okay, so I want to come back to this page as we review kind of the financial models related to the baseline options 1, 2, and 3, with and without the library component included. So, financial impact. There's a lot of numbers here. I think you will have them in front of you on your screen. I'm going to see if I can just blow these up for everybody else real quick. I think that works a little bit better. They're hard for me to see on the screen. So a couple of things related to financial plans, right? So when we think about a financial plan, under Kansas law, school districts can finance projects for no more than 30 years. So all of these financial projections are based upon a 30-year financing, number one. The 30-year financing is also very comparable to what the district did in 2016. I would say from an interest rate perspective, again, not knowing exactly the timing of what the district may do with the recommendations this evening, we're being very, very cautious with respect to interest rates. As timing considerations are reviewed by the Board of Education and decisions are made around next steps, we'll refine the financial plan, particularly around interest rates based upon timing of when the district may consider input from the public. That being said, this intent is really to give you a very high-level impact with respect to those baseline options in regard to what is the mill levy requirement if the board were to consider any of these options with and without the library project included. I want to make sure, we did note back on the mill levy history, the district's existing bonds are being supported by the existing bond and interest mill levy of 9 mills. So as patrons receive their tax statements here in this past month, the tax statements differentiate the different tax levy funds that the district levies for. On that tax statement, there was a specific mill levy for 9 mills related to the district's bond and interest budget. Keeping in mind that the 9 mills can only be used for repayment of principal and interest, that 9 mills cannot be used for any other district purpose. Okay, so again, 9 mills is the existing. So what I'm showing you in this analysis is if you were to consider these projects, how many additional mills would be required to support these options, again, with and without the library. You will notice in all these options, the mill levy, when you include the library, is 1.5 mills less. So although our bond and interest mill levy is going up for the repayment of the bonds, we're offsetting that increase by reducing the library mill levy by 1.5 mills. So there's a mill levy offset by including up to $20 million in each baseline project for the library. So again, I'll use option 2 as the baseline because I think that's what Megan had alluded to in her presentation as well. So if the board were to consider option 2 of the master plan, if we were to look at that $360 million financed over 30 years, the mill levy increase, okay, again, the mill levy increase above what the district is currently levying of 9 mills would be 8.2 mills, 8.25 mills. I'll use a $125,000 home. So if I have a $125,000 home within the district, 8.25 mills means $118.28 per year, okay, or $9.86 per month. Okay, that would be the additional tax required for option 2. If option 2 includes the library, okay, the mill levy is going to be called 7.4 mills. Okay, so 7.4 mil increase if we include the library. That's an annual impact to a $125,000 home of $106 per year, or $8.84 per month. Okay. Again, I won't go through all the scenarios, option 1, option 2, option 3, but I just want to make sure that we at least review one option related to the master facility plan and the options that were presented to the board as part of that study. And again, want to make sure we're very clear on just how the library impacts the situation with respect to lowering the library mill levy, which again offsets the overall increase related to the proposed project. In addition to, again, homeowners is one component, obviously, of taxpayers within the district. You also see in your packet there's information related to business owners. So commercial property. Oops, I missed that. Sorry about that. So homeowners is page 1. Okay. Second page is commercial property. So again, we want to make sure we're very transparent with respect to how do these projects and the associated mill levy impact? How does it impact businesses within our community? And again, the third thing, which again, there's not a lot of it, but again, also included ag land as well. Okay. So I'm gonna go back and just give you a hypothetical. on the mill levy, just to be very clear. So if we look at the mill levy history, that very, very bottom row. And this is assuming option 2, so 360 million plus library option. I wanted to illustrate what the mill levy would look like based upon a 2024-25 budget. Again, a lot of variables, a lot of hypotheticals. So again, as you know, budgets change from the standpoint of what capital outlay looks like, what LOB looks like. If we were to look at that option, the bond and interest mill levy for the 24-25 budget, would it go from 9 mils to 17.9 mils? Okay, and the library mill levy would go from 11.17 to 9.67. Okay, so again, the net increase is then what's illustrated. The total is that 68.207 mils. Again, which is the 7.3 mil, 7.4 mil requirement to support that project. So again, I think it's really important as you're thinking about facility needs, facility solutions. Obviously, the financial component is an important part of that evaluation process, and so we want to make sure the board had a full assessment of what the impact would be for the options the board's considering in the future. So, with that, I will pause for questions or whatever the next steps may be in the process, Mr. Lopez.
Yeah, thank you very much to everyone for the presentation. Great information, lots of information. And I will open up to the board for any questions to either group this time, unless there's anything else from Dr. Stubblefield to share. Dr. Nguyen?
Dustin, right?
Hi, Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Right. So help me understand that I'm getting this correct. So currently, the school district has its 49.65 mil, right? And the library currently is 11.17. I'm looking at my tax bill.
Correct, yep.
Okay?
Yep.
So the current year, does the current year stay the same? And then what's your 23, 24, or 24, 25? 23, 24?
I looked at this as just hypothetically projecting 2020.
Whatever you're looking at.
Yep.
24, is that bottom 24, 25?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so is that on top of, that's your new mill?
Correct.
And that's on top of the 11?
It's on top of it, so on top of 9, right? Is that what you're asking?
No, currently it's 11.
So library you're talking about?
Correct.
Yeah, so library would be reduced by that 1.5 mils,
Correct.
and bond and interest would go up by the 8.25 mils.
Okay, so the question was, does the 9.67 whatever layer on top of the current 11?
No. No.
They cancel each other and it
it-
becomes a new 9.6?
Correct. The 11.17 becomes the 9.6.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, help me understand, if we have 23 years left on the 2016 bond.
Yep.
You're projecting, how does that get paid off with another 30-year bond?
Okay, so the existing mill levy, right, the existing 9 mills that's currently being levied.
11 is what's currently being levied.
No, for bond interest, it's 9.
Okay.
So the 11, I think you're referencing, and that's maybe where you're going back to your first question. That 11 is library.
Okay?
So library.
And 49 is, 46 is, 49.6 is 500.
Correct. That's 500. Yes,
I know.
exactly. Yeah, that's right. So 11, the library mill levy of 11.17 would become 9.6.
Okay,
The bond and interest mill levy, which is currently 9, and the 9 mills right now is used to basically pay the 2016 bonds.
correct.
Okay, that becomes 17.9. because now the combination of the 9 plus the additional 8.25, that pays both the existing bonds plus, in this case, option number 2.
Okay.
Good question.
So you have layered, would it be correct to say you have layered them on top of each other?
Exactly right, yes. Yeah.
And that now the total levy is, what figure did you give?
Well, the total bond and interest mill levy would be
Correct.
17.9.
17.9, okay.
After, yep, and then after we reduce the library, you can see on the right-hand side, 68.207 would be the total mill levy, including the library.
And, okay, thank you.
Yep, good question.
That would fall, that first bond, once it's paid off, that would fall off and that would reduce bond and interest?
Yeah, and actually, it would, and actually, Mr. Lopez, as a board finalizes like the direction of which option makes the most sense, there's a lot of financial numbers behind the scenes. I think it'd be really, really good for the board to see the full detail of the financial plan for whatever option the board decides to proceed with. But yeah, the answer's yes.
But it won't be paid off for 23 more years.
Right.
We won't be here.
Me neither.
I included you. I didn't say you wasn't going to be alive, you wouldn't be here.
Okay. Listen, at Cube, there were like 5 people that
Thank
stood
you for
up and
clarifying.
said they were on the board for like 30 years,
I
right?
know, and they're no longer here.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions for either group? Ms. Russell?
I just want to first say thank you to Hollis and Miller and team for all of the work that you have done. You've heard a lot of opinions, a lot of conversations, a lot of what ifs, and you guys have taken it with just, hey, we want to make you informed, but also do what's best for your district and most importantly, our students. So kudos to you and the team. I don't see Megan. Oh, okay, there she is. I'm like, look at she in the corner. But thank you all. And I would just say with that, I would make a motion to accept the report from Hollis and Miller with the recommendation that the feeder pattern, that is a conversation to be continued, that work be sent to the boundary committee.
There's a motion on the floor to accept the report from Hollis and Miller, again with the recommendation for the feeder discussion to be taken by the boundary. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any questions or discussion?
I have some discussion. I too like to say thank you, and you know, I have to give you a reality check. I'm still waiting for the legible copy of the data on the side that is too small and is cut off. Remember?
Yes, I thought we had provided updates to
No,
Steve.
you still can't read it.
Still can't read it? Okay, we will get with you and get that rectified.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions, Ms. Clark?
I have questions on the process. So we just went through and approved for it to go to the facility committee, which means that they will come back to, like, I want to make sure I understand internally.
Right, so the current motion is to really just accept and approve the report, right? So they've completed their work, they've submitted their information, their recommendations. We're just saying thank you, and we're going to send the conversation, or what the motion is on the floor, for the facilities and the boundary committee, to take on and continue the conversation along the feeder pattern.
Got it, okay.
So that's what's currently, the motion that's currently on the floor.
Okay.
And I will just add, the recommendation or my rationale for the boundary committee is, if you remember, the boundary committee is made up of like 20-ish individuals in the community who voted to be a part, or not voted, who volunteered, applied to be a part of this committee. That committee, since the last RSP report 2 years ago-ish, has not convened. So I think this is a great opportunity for them to get together, it may have been a year and a half, I'm sorry, to get together and get feedback from both parents who are impacted. I know personally that about 6 to 7 of them are in the Harmon cluster, which is one of the impacted areas, and we could do some follow-up research on those who would be in the northeast area to see if there's representation. I don't have the list with me right now, but that would give it an opportunity to go back to them for feedback as well in this process.
Thank you. I think that was good for everyone, and it connected dots for me, so thank you.
Thank you. And again, for clarity, this doesn't mean that we're taking any of the recommendations. It's just we're accepting their report. Ms. Page, you had a question?
Yeah, well, just a comment, and I don't have a question for them, but I asked at the last meeting, and I know some people feel, because I think we need to know what's happening with our city, where are they financially, our county, because that all has a bearing. For those of us who pay taxes, you know, I'm one of these people, I'm tired of paying, and what I get back for what I pay, it just doesn't work for me. And I'm not saying, and I know people say, oh, she doesn't want I do want it. But I don't want to be like the people in Missouri, where they pay taxes and some of them may lose their homes. I'm just saying what I see with Missouri. I don't want that to happen to us. And I want for us to be mindful, because we've had people come in and say, taxes. You know, they're concerned about communities, and hopefully we will allow the public to have a say in that. But we got to be aware of that. If we're paying taxes, and it, you know, to some it may not seem like much. Oh, it's just 11.9. Well, you still got to pay plus everything else. We got the pilot tax, we got the state, the city, all of that. I asked, can we find out what's going on? I called. They told me, oh, just go on our website. You go on the website, you got to read almost 100 pages. Can somebody simplify that? Till finally I did get a call back. He said, well, we are having financial problems. And we got a 5-year plan. We're going to make some adjustments. So I think we need to look at that too, if we want to be fair to the people we represent. All that needs to come into place. Somebody needs to come in here from the city and talk to us. What's going on? Where are we finding that? You hear so many different things. We're supposed to be an institution of higher learning. Let's deal with the facts. This is not somebody's opinion. Where are we? Can they come and give us that? Did anybody check? I asked that.
So if you, as far as administration, we have the information that was shared in our earlier meeting when all of the school districts met with the unified government, and we shared our financial information, and they, prior to that, shared theirs. But outside of that, because it's a different organization, I mean, we are separate while it's all combined. That's all the information that we have. It would be the board and the elected officials who would have to decide to come together to have those sort of complex conversations around how each impacts the other. I will say, in a previous position, there are models out there where they have regular scheduled meetings and talk about major projects that are going on and how they impact one another, but that would be up to the officials from each, and Greg, if I'm wrong, tell me, the elected officials would have to facilitate that sort of conversation to talk about that. I will say that the UG did this past spring and early fall, they have taken steps specifically with the educational institutions, and they invited us to a meeting to share our information. And I know that there were some future plans that for those conversations to continue, but as far as any other additional information, the staff does not have it. We just have what is publicly out there as well.
My opinion, we don't have to agree. Respect yours. I believe you respect mine. But I just think we should check and see, how are we? I don't think that's a bad thing to see, because you got your people saying, hey, you know, these taxes, they're killing us. I don't think that's a bad, we want to hear them. Everybody needs to vote, but everybody needs all the information we can give them. That's all I'm asking. And I get that, but I still say we need to ask somebody, what's going on?
Additional thoughts or questions on the current motion on the table to approve the report? Accept the report, thank you. Accept the report and for the boundary committee to continue to investigate the feeder patterns.
Just a comment to Ms. Russell, you probably want to maybe update your boundary because you have probably some people who have moved away, kids graduated, new families in, so.
Currently, that's Janie's job. But we will reevaluate
well.
and I think accept
For the new person who will then chair the
the
boundary.
reassignments. Yeah, we will definitely, I think we
Well,
can.
they all come together.
Yeah.
They're all going to have to come together.
But I also think to make sure that there is that representation.
Representation.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. There are no other comments or questions. There's a motion on the floor in a second. Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Jenny Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez.
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Rachel Russell,
Rachel Russell, yes.
Dr. Nguyen.
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Thank you. Board, the remainder of the time that we have with us is just for us, again, to continue this conversation around, we heard a lot of recommendations, a lot of information that was presented to us, and I think we've got a little bit of time still to discuss, ask questions, have a conversation as a board. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, for us as a district and as a board to gather this information and share out as much information that we can so that we all can continue to make informed decisions. So the rest of the time today, and we do have a couple of executive sessions that we need to get to before we retire today, but we'll spend some time to allow for this board to have a conversation, discussion, kind of a working session on what does happen next, to Ms. Clark's question. What's next? So we've got all this information. What do we do with it, right? So
I'd like to
Dr. Nguyen.
see us go to visit the schools that are on the demo rebuild list. Because again, I thank you for the assessments, because we as a board didn't know where the cracks in the foundation were. And so those are immediate needs. So I think it would be responsible for us to just really dig deep into the data and visually see that, I mean, you can see you have 2,000 students in a building that is fit for 1,000. All we have to do is be there at passing time, or see some of the restrooms, or see some of the roofs. I think that is our responsibility, and quickly, before it gets worse.
Dr. Nguyen.
Mr. Lopez, oh, I'm sorry. I just want to call out that the library is a part of this as well. And so we talk about the schools, but I think it's fair to those that have been working through this to figure out when and where that falls into place so that communication is clear. So through this open discussion, maybe not an answer today, but I also want to be fair to that committee and to our public.
Humphries?
We've been working, or that Hollis and Miller's been working on this report for 10 months. They've given us updates in August. That's when you gave us the first big one, right? September, you updated us again. October, you've been here every month updating the board. I am finishing 6.5 years on the school board. I have been to every one of our buildings multiple times. I have seen the things that they have reflected. If you as a board member have not been into all of our buildings, then you need to get out there because some of our buildings are very inaccessible, they're old, their utility costs are through the roof because they're not modern day. They don't serve modern day learning. We need to invest in our children. Our children are our future community members. We need to remember that. It's not an expense, it's an investment in the future. And as I sit here, I'm looking at my property tax statement, and my house falls into $125,000 realm. And I'm going, I can get all these updates for our children to show them that we value them, and possibly a new library, which our community needs, for $10 a month. That is something I can see, $10 a month added to what I'm paying now. That's less, much less than my husband and I going out to eat for one meal. It's budgetable. If you're really low income, like some people have talked about, there are property tax relief programs, the homestead. Dr. Nguyen may know more about those than I do, being on the legislature. But there are charity. Last year, we got over an 8% raise. This year, we're getting almost 4% raise. We have to give back to our community, just like our parents did when they came home from World War II. What happened? They invested in infrastructure. They invested in new schools. We had new schools because our parents felt it was important to invest in us. And it's our turn to turn around and invest in our children so they have modern day healthy buildings to learn in, so they know that we value them. We need to do it responsibly. We need to take it to the voters, show them what the plan is, show them how much it costs in dollars, and let them vote on it. And that's a lot of words out of Janie, because Janie usually doesn't talk that much, but I feel very strongly we need to let our voters have impact. They need to decide, do they want to spend $10 a month to enrich our community? Because if you go into the rural areas where they've had to close schools, that kills their towns. People move for schools. We know that. And our kids deserve good quality buildings, along with well-paid staff. So I'm sorry, I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. I do have a comment and then a clarifying question, then Ms. Russell. So just, follow up on Jane, and I think we all agree and have said this, all of us in different ways and different times, right? Our students deserve facilities, infrastructure that is state-of-the-art, and as education has continued to shift and what learning looks like continues to shift, we also want to make sure that we're keeping up with what educating our students, our young scholars, looks like. So I think looking at our facilities is a priority, and I think that's part of why this board decided to do this assessment, so that we could understand where we're at with all of our facilities. So and education will continue to shift. Unfortunately, some of our buildings haven't been able to keep up with those changes in technology and how scholars learn and how we're asking our educators to teach. And I think, this is to Ms. Humphries' point, or something she said, is this is an investment that we're making in our community and our students and our families that will continue to spur scholars learning, and will continue to invest in communities that will create economic development as well. So there's a lot that positive that comes from investing in our schools. But I also know and I understand that, folks are in different places in their lives, and financials are important, and we've got to be respectful and understand that as well. And I think this board does carry carry that as well. And it's been said many times, though, this board is not making a decision on passing a bond. This board is, at some point, will allow, hopefully, to the community to make that choice. And it's not this board's choice not this board that will make that decision. The clarifying question I have, in looking at the different options, whether it's 300, 360, the 400, on the side there, if we include the library, does that increase the option from 360 to 380? Or is it 360 with up to 20 million of that 360? If I'm reading it correctly, it's 360 without the library, 380 if we're including the library, and that's where the mill and everything would, okay, so it would be 400 or 420 or 300 and 320, okay.
Correct, up
Just
to
wanted to
the
clarify
additional
that.
20 million, so above the base option.
Thank you. Ms. Russell and then Ms. Page.
Yeah, I think I have a question, and then I have some comments. My question, and it may be a Dustin question, or it may be a Greg question. So he talked about the reduction of the mill for the library at 1.5. However, the motion that the board made to begin reserving dollars for the downtown library or operations, how people want to determine it, was for 2 mills. Is there a reason why we are not reducing 2 mills? Because we're essentially saying we've gotten to this point, so we're taking down the 1.5, but the original motion was
So,
for 2 mills.
I can answer it, Dustin. The 1.5 is because one of the things that would need to be factored in is the ongoing maintenance, and capital outlay, and things that happen for all of the libraries. The original motion talked about operations. The conversation around it, I was not present. My understanding was specifically for the downtown library, but it was also for the maintenance of all of the library facilities.
Okay.
If you reduced it by 2, there would need to be a clear plan to talk about how to maintain it.
Okay, thank you. I just want to be clear because I think for sustainability's sake, for when I'm not here, Dr. Nguyen, I want to make sure that it's clear why we only did 1.5, but the original motion was for 2. Okay. And I am a person, I have said it over and over again, I do not want to belabor this conversation. I think I want to start with where we all can be grounded and where we all can agree, and that is that our students first deserve beautiful buildings and great environments, but they also deserve quality education. I don't think any of us in this room can disagree with that. And I think the work that we have done supports that and only reinstills the importance of why all of us are in this room, why all of us are sitting at this table, and why we are all here. Additionally, I will say, no decision that I make at this table or in any table that I'm sitting at is ever taken lightly. There have been comments, there have been things said about we just don't care about what people's taxes are, or we don't care about people's finances, and I am here to say that that is wrong. I do care. I put my heart and soul into this community each and every day. I show up, I show out, and I stand beside the people that I am serving, and no one will ever take that away from me. So secondly, we have gathered all of this information. Thank you to the comms team again, who has created a landing page to share the process, who has put it on YouTube, who has done all of the work. I don't know how else to reach people who are not already here. We have arrived. We have gotten to a place over the last 10 months for which our community has asked for. We want to talk about fiscal responsibility. Well, we got to quit spending money in buildings that should not exist anymore. Lastly, we talk about redevelopment. The city talks about it, our district talks about it, our communities talk about it. A bond is redevelopment in our community. And by us saying yes to taking it to the voters, we are adding 2 community assets, both in downtown. And I am committed to ensuring whatever, if the voters say yes, that this aquatic center be in east of 635, because I agree. We owe it to our community to have development east of 635. So, with that, I am going to make a motion. Whew. Lord. If I can quit shaking, because I'm, whew. Okay. I am making a motion to approve option 3A in an amount not to exceed $400 million plus the library project in an amount not to exceed $20 million on behalf of the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools.
Second the motion.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. I'll open it up for questions and discussion. And Ms. Page, you had a question, yes.
I don't think we should vote on this tonight, that we need to have some more conversation. Ultimately, it's up to the people. I wouldn't argue you on that. The people need to decide. But there are some other factors that should be dealt with, and we're just rushing to do this. And that doesn't mean I don't want progress, and it's going to be more than $10. Let's not fool ourselves. It's more than $10. So I don't think we should just rush so hastily into doing this. And I know you'll say, oh, we're just kicking the can. I'm not trying to kick the can. We need to sit down and have some real conversations and look at everything. And I don't think we've looked at everything. Now, when you got a district where you got 80% or more that are at risk, these are the kids. What about their parents? They're struggling. And but I would cut the amount. And I don't think we should do that.
Additional comments or questions? Dr. Nguyen?
Unfortunately, I cannot support your motion. I believe our kids and our community deserve quality education first. And so I don't know, I'm not going to personally attack you either, but I don't know if there is something that must be proven today, but I know some of the conversation is that, yeah, it must be put to the vote, to the people. But let me say some of the conversation is also, some of us are not even property owners. So we may understand the concept, but we may not understand the full impact of the shrinking number of property owners in Kansas City, Kansas district. This is not Wyandotte County. Wyandotte County doesn't pay for this. Kansas City, Kansas district pays for it. And so I can't support that, your motion. I believe that our people would support a bond if they know, here is a school that's falling apart. It's, it's a safety hazard. So I cannot support your motion, the motion.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions, Ms. Clark?
And I apologize. With that motion, though, there's no determination. This is a question. This is only a question. There's no determination as far as what those dollars would go for. We're just, it would, and I just want to make sure. I know I'm kind of going over my words, stumbling over my words here.
You're fine. So with that motion, we would, what has been outlined is pretty much the direction based on that slide that she shared about immediate needs, the buildings, those things. So Central and Argentine, which have been conversations for years. Okay. The consolidation, which has financial implications because of the fact that we're doubling up on staff and operations for buildings that are underutilized. Okay. However, what I will say is by the motion, if this board was to approve this motion today, it gives staff direction, and then in a meeting in January, there would be a resolution presented. And Steve, help me if there are pieces I'm missing. There would be a resolution which would kind of formalize the direction in which we're going based on this feedback.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions or thoughts? Yes,
You know,
Dr. Nguyen.
just from that explanation gives me more of a pause. That you set out a figure and that it gives staff direction. We make the decision here as far as what is going to be done and what is not. And so that whole thought process, in my opinion, is a little bit off from the responsibility to our responsibility.
So as I've mentioned before, I'm open to feedback and conversations. However, people say, we need to talk, we need to have more time, but I don't know what else people want. So the Hollis and Miller, they have provided, they've taken the feedback. I guess what I'm saying by staff doing it means that staff is going to have to file the paperwork, to do the work in order to get it going. That's not what I get paid for.
You don't get paid.
My point exactly.
Exactly.
Because
But
we
we
have
have a
staff to-
responsibility to be very responsive.
Dr.
But
Nguyen,
it's
I
an
don't want to
opinion.
argue with you.
Oh, I won't.
Additional comments or questions? Not.
To clarify, if we vote yes on this, then staff prepares a more detailed resolution with what we're going to do like we did with the last bond. And then we take it to the voters.
No. Staff has got to make the work project first. The resolution does not identify the buildings. The resolution does not identify
By
buildings.
me saying option 3A, I am selecting the work project and the buildings based on the recommendations of Hollis and Miller.
But the
That is my
resolution-
intention.
But the resolution does not identify
Okay,
buildings.
I apologize.
So, yes, so those are the next,
Take it to the voters.
correct.
And then the voters decide whether they want this or they don't want this. But we give them the information, why these buildings were selected, why these projects were selected, and then the voters make the decision. So we're just saying, we want the voters to have their input when we show them what we are looking at. Is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct. So the voters have all the time in all of our emails to email us and share, but they also have to show up and vote. So
Just one last comment.
Yes,
It's
Dr.
never
Wayne.
a question whether the voters decide. That's the only way it can happen. It has to go to the voters. So that's never a question. It's just a matter of what we're going to present to the voters. And when.
Thank you. Thank you. Additional comments, questions, Ms. Clark?
And what does that motion do for the library? Again, I'm sorry if I'm missing it.
yeah, so at this point, the library in the motion, we currently have the current accrued dollars around 20 mil. We have a commitment from the foundation to do some fundraising. At a future meeting, this board will need to make a decision on how much we are willing to spend on a downtown library.
Okay.
And I think, I don't see Ms. Levers, but I think that her team is internally working to figure out some of those moving parts with the committee.
But this says up to.
220 million is what the current motion is on
So
the
if the
floor.
bids came back 56 million for the library, then we would cut our portion back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great conversation. Additional thoughts, questions? Seeing and hearing none, there is a motion again, just for clarity, to approve option 3A in the amount of 400 million plus 20 million, up to 20 million for the library. Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
remember this, no, and I encourage everybody to get involved and to take an active role.
Rachel Russell,
Rachel Russell, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
I cannot vote at this time for a $420 million bond to go out, and we don't really know what is important and what is a want and what is a need. And I don't think the KCK taxpayer is an ATM machine. I vote no.
thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. We're next on our agenda. We have a couple of executive sessions to continue. First, I'd entertain a motion. We will table the executive session B for the next board meeting, so we will not have that executive session today. Would entertain a motion to recess to executive session to discuss matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interests of parties involved under COMA, to include Dr. Stubblefield, Dr. Campbell, Sam Reed-Evans, Steve Lilly, and Greg Goheen invited to be present, and Chief Nicholson, going in at 3:16 for 10 minutes. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith, roll call.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes?
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Yeah.
Rachel Russell,
Rachel Russell, yes.
Dr. Nguyen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to return to open session, please.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Janie and seconded by Ms. Drew. Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda.
Yolanda.
Maxine Drew. Janie.
Janie Humphries, yes. Randy Lopez.
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Are we voting to reconvene or vote?
To reconvene in open session.
Rachel Russell. Dr. Wynn.
Thank you. We're back in open session. Board, I would entertain a motion to recess to executive session for consultation with the attorney on matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under the Kansas Open Meetings Act with Dr. Stubblefield, Dr. Campbell, Sammy Devon, Steve Lilly, and Greg Goheen invited to be present, going in at 3:30 for 5 minutes. And with potential action to follow, sorry.
So moved.
Moved by Janie,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Russell. Ms. Smith, roll call.
Yolanda Clark.
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries, yes.
Janie Humphries. Randy Lopez.
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Rachel Russell, yes.
Dr. Wynn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to return to open session, please.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Rachel Russell,
Rachel Russell, yes.
Dr. Nguyen.
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Thank you. Is there a motion that the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools join the class action lawsuit on social media?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Rachel Russell,
Rachel Russell, yes.
Dr. Nguyen. Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you again, board. Thank you. Happy holidays to everyone. See you all tomorrow, hopefully, at the foundation event. And Janie, thank you so much for everything. And Ms. Russell.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, because I'm trying to keep up with it, is that it was somebody's birthday this month. And so I'm not going to embarrass her, but happy birthday, Dr. Stubblefield. I'm going to try to keep up with my happy birthday thing, because I said August birthdays, and everybody was like, oh my gosh. But, oh, Dr. Nguyen, it's your birthday too? Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, happy birthday to our December twins. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just had to close the meeting with that fun note, but also I hope both of you had a great birthday and everyone has a great holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.